Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Essence of Forte, continuing with my video response to AEG's video, which was made as a response to my pulling apart of State of Daniel's video, EOT Challenge Accepted. With that said, let us get back to it. Ridiculous how? What level are we on when talking about ridiculous? Are we on about talking snake level ridiculous? Are we on about seven-headed dragon ridiculous? Demon pig ridiculous? Unicorn ridiculous? Because you know, unicorns exist in the Bible, so when you talk about how ridiculous the invisible pink unicorn is, you are calling part of the Bible ridiculous as well. I would mention talking ass, but from watching your videos, I don't find that entirely improbable.
Ooh, snaps.
However, the point is to point out how ridiculous the Bible is. The only difference is the amount of time between when it was written and modern day, and the fact that it has so many followers.
These arguments are kind of ridiculous because new atheists tend to support, of course, Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, such as yourself, even though their arguments are pure polemic. They are not logical. They do not refer to the actual philosophy of religion literature. Not to mention, worst of all, they're just bad philosophers. I'm sorry, but a Christopher Hitchens is no J.L. Schellenberg.
Dawkins is a biologist. Agreed. Which is why Christians should stop crying about how he's apparently afraid of William Lane Craig. Philosophy is not his field. Hitchens was a brilliant journalist in looking past the mantra of the time with such people as Teresa. Now, all this is good and all, except for one major fact. Nowhere in my original video did I ever mention either Hitchens or Dawkins. The only individual I mentioned in my video was Bertrand Russell. I admit, this makes me rather miffed at the fact that you have attempted to deceive viewers in what you state about the apparent sources of my arguments. I have read a single book by Hitchens, and that was the missionary position. And beyond that, I've only watched lectures given by Dawkins on biology, or debates by Hitchens on civil matters, such as the damage caused by religion in the world today. I get why you assert the phrase, such as yourself in this clip, however. You are merely trying to chum the water around the boat to enable a theistic feeding frenzy founded upon falsehood. If I do not source person X or Y in an argument due to their irrelevance, then do not lie and argue that I have. This cannot be ignorance because you are adding in material I have never said. And if you claim otherwise, then please provide me with a timestamp in my original video.
Now on to some of your more specific points. No, the Bible does not mention unicorns. All it says is that there are animals with one horns. Unicorn is a type of description or classification of an animal therein. So a unicorn would be a one-horned animal, a bicorn would be a two-horned animal, a tricorn would be a three-horned animal, and so on and so forth. The only work ever to explicitly call it unicorn, by the way, or translate it as such, is from the King James Version. Most modern translations will use the term oxen, as that's probably the better way of thinking about it. It comes from the Hebrew ram, ar, em. I'm not sure how to pronounce that specifically, but there it is.
And I shall respond to you in the same way that I did those in the comment section. I made the specific statement that if unicorns were ridiculous, then the Bible was as well, because it mentions unicorns. If you are changing the definition of unicorn and what it means, then the same goes for the invisible pink unicorn. I am very select in the qualifiers I use, as I've heard this defense before. All I am doing is mirroring your behavior.
As for the term seven-headed dragon, that's usually in reference to Babylon or Rome from the Book of Revelations. It's not a literal seven-headed dragon or beast. I think we can distinguish that considering the apocalyptic literature which it's derived from.
First of all, how? Show me an objective and systematic way of distinguishing metaphor from non-metaphor in a book of myth. For example, does it say, this is a story, or this is a metaphor? If not, do you merely count whatever is unlikely as a metaphor? If so, in that case, practically the entire Bible is metaphor from God to the angels to Jesus rising from the dead. Now, as for your claim of it being Rome or Babylon, it's the book of the Apocalypse. The Apocalypse has not yet happened. The Roman Empire and Babylon no longer exist. I don't know if you realize this. I know some people say that the passage is symbolic of Jesus' birth, but even in the most symbolic sense it does not match. For example, Christ failed to mention that there was a war in the heavens. And if it were Christ, considering that Revelations was written 90 or so years after his birth, it would hardly count as prophecy.
You mentioned, for example, talking snakes and talking asses. Now, first of all, you have to realize that these two were not ordinary animals. They were, of course, one, in terms of the ass, controlled by God to speak to Balaam, and the other controlled or manifested by Satan.
Well, for snakes there's also the complete and total lack of vocal cords, and even a pig wouldn't be able to speak in a human manner. It's not just will to deal with. Ergo, there must be some form of magic involved, which still means it is ridiculous and doesn't somehow overcome my comment. If I were Satan and I had to trick Adam and Eve, I'd just imitate the voice of God and order them to eat from the fruit. Cut out the middleman. Snake.
And before you say there is nothing in the book of Genesis that lends us to believe that Satan is the snake, just remember, Christianity is based on what's known as progressive revelation.
This is rather literally an acknowledgement of you are just making it up as you go along. It's like a role-play session where everyone adds a bit as it goes around the table.
Basically, God reveals things to us more and more and more. So basically, within the Garden of Eden, what has been revealed is in terms of Satan being the snake. It's actually found within the book of Revelations itself as kind of a hint, and it's been adopted by quite a few church fathers and is currently in the Catholic Church the official doctrine and teaching.
Notice the lack of clarity. It is almost as if people are reading into the scripture what they want rather than what is. But no, I do not mind it being Satan. All it means is this. Whilst God created man, it was Satan who created humanity. The reason I say this is because we are told that it is evil which allows for what we refer to as free will, and that evil was only introduced through the fall of man. Ergo, humanity is the first creation of Satan by the teachings of the Catholic Church.
Lastly, to the pigs, they were not demonic themselves, but rather controlled by demons. I think there's a bit of a distinction to be made there, just saying.
That is still a demonic pig. It is a pig controlled by a demon. Ergo, it is demonic. You're just splitting hairs now.
Now, if you want to call these things ridiculous, that's perfectly fine, but there's a bit of a burden on you to disprove them.
No. As is shown by Russell's teapot and the mountain of other analogies. The only defense Daniel really had to offer was genetic fallacy and special pleading. Special pleading in that the flying spaghetti monster and the invisible pink unicorn are ridiculous. I responded to this by pointing out the ridiculous aspects of the Bible. Ergo, the Bible by your own logic may just be as equally discredited as the flying spaghetti monster or the invisible pink unicorn.
Not necessarily these specific events, but you could just disprove our religion by either attacking the God concept directly, which I think you failed to do accurately so far in this video, but you're going to give it the good college try later on.
You mean like an invisible, all-loving, however always vengeful sky wizard that likes drowning babies? Because, you know, that's the pinnacle of sense.
First of all, the term you're looking for isn't invisible, it's incorporeal. Invisible just means away from sight or undetectable through human vision. That's it. So basically, a cork or an atom, for example, these are examples of things that are quote-unquote invisible. Yes, we can test their effects, but for all intents and purposes, we cannot see them, thus they're invisible. Incorporeal just means immaterial, or as I alluded earlier, of one part.
Question. Is God omnipotent? If so, then he is at the very least in a partial state of invisibility, as no, I cannot see any evidence of his presence anywhere in reality. All I do in fact see is a rather chaotic set of events holding to arbitrary universal constants, many of which we are still studying. If he is everywhere and I cannot see him with my eyes, then yes, by your own definition he is invisible. However, being invisible does not make something temporal. It's one of those things where it goes one way and not the other.
Alright, second of all, the term magic in the way you're using it is intellectually dishonest, because magic just means a miracle conjured up by a demonic force or a force that is antithetical to the will of God but is supernatural nonetheless. That's a judgment call, and the fact that you're saying God is being quote-unquote magical by creating the world and doing all this is actually a judgment call. You need your own deity to say God is acting against his will, which you don't have as an atheist. I'm sorry, but that is a little disingenuous.
What utter rubbish. Magic, definition, the power of apparently influencing events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. Miracle, definition, an extraordinary and welcome event that is not explicable by nature or scientific laws and is therefore attributed to a divine agency. Those two overlap, and what the hell is all this about me requiring a deity to point out that miracles are merely a subset of magic which is welcome and attributed to the divine origin? It's still magic and it is still extraordinary. Take this for example. Necromancy is the practice of bringing someone back from the dead to give prophecy. Necromancy is a form of sorcery. Sorcery is a form of magic. Jesus was apparently resurrected by the Father in order to give prophecy, ergo is the practice of necromancy, which is sorcery, which is magic. I don't need any unbased belief in a deity to point this fact out.
Being vengeful just means you're seeking recompense or retribution for something that has been done onto you, or likewise to one of your children, sin nonetheless. So to say that God is being quote-unquote vengeful just means that all he wants to do, or all he does, is cast judgment on those who sin. That's just comes with the role of being judge. Now, God could still be all-loving while doing that. There's no contradiction in it. It just means that God has to be vengeful or seek retribution because he is an all-just God. It doesn't mean he has to like giving retribution to his son. Imagine, for example, you being a father who's also a judge and your son is being tried for murder. I don't know why this is happening, family issues and all, but putting that aside, chances are you still love your son, but you know that justice has to be done. It doesn't take away from the fact that you still love him.
No. What he is doing is equatable to beating a child for daring to eat, breathe, and sleep. Not to mention that the idea of original sin is one of the most immoral concepts I can possibly think of, to punish an innocent for the actions of the guilty, who, by the way, only did what they were programmed to do by all accounts and all definitions of an all-knowing and all-powerful deity who would have predicted the outcome of his creation. Then there is the fact that not only will they be slaughtered like children at the hands of a psychotic killer, but will apparently also be tortured for all eternity. Infinite pain for finite crimes, which is the exact opposite of justice. Justice is displayed as scales because the punishment should fit the crime.
Now, with regards to the enjoying of drowning infants, God does not enjoy doing any such thing or retribution on any person. However, God, being the giver of life, is just in taking it away whenever he sees fit to the best of possibility as he wishes. I think he's in a much better place, all things considered, because he's all-knowing and he has far more cognitive ability than we do to see all events and particulars and instances that may or might not be prevalent in making a decision. This is called a skeptical theistic approach to things. Of course, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I'll send a link to basically the mainstay of skeptical theism.
I don't buy this for 1 second. Here, I as a mortal man can state with absolute certainty that I in his position, with his power, would have a better solution. I could have clicked my non-physical fingers and had the children, infants, beggars, and the like all teleported to just after the flood. And before you use the lovely defence of there would be no one to look after the infants as they grew, which has been used to cover for many child slaughters in history. I'm God. I will provide. I could send angels down to care for them, or even make them age quickly, yet retain positive memories of life and my presence. It may not be perfect, but it's certainly better.
Just to give a modern day reference to how tough it could be making a moral decision or coming to grips with how a particular action might be considered moral or immoral, remember this. There are still ethicists to debate on whether or not it was correct for Americans to bomb Japan with atomic weaponry. And we can't just say that these people are being evil or immoral in defending the Americans. No, they're not. They're basically using ethical frameworks to defend such an action as being moral within that specific context. Can we disagree? Sure, but what this serves to illustrate is that a moral decision is far more complex than you're giving it credit for.
As humans with limited power? Yeah, sure. As the actions of a self-proclaimed all-powerful deity, I damn well expect better, and sod those who say I don't have the right to question. Isn't that the greatest hypocrisy of Christian theology? We stand by this willy-nilly idea of free will unto the point that you decide to question your totalitarian ruler. When a child is abused by their parents, we don't say, how dare you question those that raised you, as that would be a disgraceful victim blame, and it doesn't sit here either. No, you don't. If you did, you would not be Christian. You believe in magic. Call it miracles or whatever you like. It is magic. The point is, these parodies are there to show you the burden of proof is on the person making the claim that X exists. It is an extraordinary claim and therefore requires extraordinary evidence. The burden of proof is not on the person who disbelieves in said extraordinary claim. That's what their intention is, and that's what they do very well.
Valuing rationality and holding on to an irrational belief are not mutually exclusive. People can hold to an irrational belief and not know that it's irrational because they lack enough time to properly reflect on the issue, but at the same time can still value the rationality itself. There's the main distinction we have to make in the first assumption or accusation that you make against State of Daniel.
However, by the argument he is attempting to distance his religion from, we know that he knows the rationality behind things and refuses to accept responsibility for that. That is a major fact you are ignoring.
Now, with your reference to magic, like I said before, it's miraculous because it's done or ordained by God. To call it magic is mostly a judgment call on your end, which you're not allowed in doing.
Except for the very fact that yes, I can provide argument to support my position factually, and did so before. Never tell an atheist they cannot talk about a certain topic. It will not end all at well for you. Not to mention that on both accounts you have failed to expand on what you mean and why I cannot talk about these areas.
But moving aside from that, let's just remember a couple of other things. If you're making the claim that quote-unquote magic, or the miraculous in this scenario, is irrational, you have to prove it's irrational. There is a burden of proof on you to do so. You're the one making the claim or the accusation. You have to remember this.
My evidence is all of known history and the very basis of sound epistemology. Is your belief valid and supported or not? No? Well, then I will not accept it. Note that any fallacy you are putting up here is a fallacy that deflects back onto you and Daniel, as Daniel was the one who stated that the flying spaghetti monster and the invisible pink unicorn are irrational, and I retorted with the comparisons from the Bible. With every attempt to poison my argument, you have done so to your own position.
Second of all, just to say miracles can't happen because miracles can't happen is question-begging, and at the worst rank of it too.
Which would be good if I ever said that, which, oh wait, no I didn't. Honestly, EAG, it does not reflect well on you when you have to make shit up and try to attack a false position. We call that a straw man. Yes, some cracks are beginning to show in my attitude. You are actively deceiving in that you are adding stuff I never said, and that is not a way to keep me civil.
So please provide a reason why miracles are impossible. Hume's argument against miracles, for example, would have been a good one. Instead, what happened was you relied on the old trope, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Remember this, extraordinaries are not a unit of measurement. Something that's extraordinary to me might not be extraordinary to you, and vice versa. Also, I'd like to ask, why don't vengeful claims require vengeful evidence, or sad claims require sad evidence? It's completely ridiculous, and sorry, but not a maxim that's, in my opinion, ultra reputable.
What the hell is any of this? What video are you responding to? Because it is certainly not my own. I did, however, in my second video, where Daniel showed he didn't understand the arguments for burden of proof are not some unifying theory of philosophy that cover all fields, state that due to all mysteries solved have shown natural origins, making it unlikely that this one busts the trend and is thus extraordinary as it resides beyond what is commonly known. However, you could not be arguing against that, as the second video was out after yours, ergo this entire thing is a charade. That the question, what evidence do you have that God does not exist, is a moronic question.
I'm sorry, but that's just more new atheistic bullshit. That's not the case at all. There's a whole literature devoted to answering why is the existence of God nonsensical or true. There are various atheist philosophers who make their livelihood on that very question. It's not silly. It's not easily disproven. It's actually a deep philosophical question that we've been pondering for 2,000 years. Actually, even longer than that, if we're going back to the Hellenistics. And yes, there is a positive burden of proof on the atheists, because here's actually how the main division is given. The question is, what are we justified in believing? The theist says the belief that God is true is justified. The atheist says not only is it not justified, but there's good justification to not believe in it.
Nope. An atheist is one who has an absence of theism. That is why it's an A position.
And lastly, the agnostic is someone who says we're not justified in believing in it, but we're not justified fully in dismissing it. That's been the main distinction in the philosophy of religion. Paul Draper is an agnostic, for example. J.L. Schellenberg is an atheist. John L. Mackey is also an atheist. And then again, you have people like William Lane Craig and Plantinga and Swinburne who are theists. There's a distinction to be made here.
Yes, and many of the definitions do not cross over or match perfectly as dealt with at the end of my first video. I will not torture you all with the same lecture. Now that's the end of this video, and I just have to ask EAG, why the utter dishonesty on your part? You know, I started the first video and you seemed okay, the other guys I talked to seemed to have a good impression of you, so I started civil. I even said I understand if you waited until I'd done all 3 videos to do a response, even if it took longer. Fact is, I don't watch ahead of segments until I do my editing, so I didn't know, apart from the whole Hitchens and Dawkins thing, which I was going to let slide, what you were going to say. I'm not at all happy when someone edits what I have said, so when you lied about me begging the question, that just derails any respect I possibly had for you. It really does. Now I ask the question on how the last 10 minutes will go. So yes, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Don't forget to check out my Patreon, and please think about supporting my work, as well as click like, comment, subscribe and share on Facebook and Twitter. It really does help for you to share my videos. Also check out my own Facebook and Twitter, as I do updates now and then, so it keeps you updated a little bit more. This is Essence of Thought, hoping you are all doing well. Take care and out.